So North have just released the 2025 Nova Pro. They've made a heap of different changes to the previous wing, and I want to know, has it made a difference and how does it compare to similar wings in the same market? If you stick around, I'm going to answer those questions and work out whether this wing is right for you. Like with always, please like and subscribe, really helps me build, make more content like this. All right, let's get into it. So compared to last year's Nova Pro, the 2025 model has been marketed as being lighter weight, increased agility, and more streamlined. They claim to have reduced the drag, which allows it to go upwind better, and generally it's more efficient in all points of sail. Look, how have they done this? Well, they've introduced a load of different features, they've changed the shape, so let's dive into each one of those right now. So first up, they have completely redesigned the canopy. They have done this with a radiate geometric panel layout and a load diffuser. Now, this is nothing new. We've definitely seen this from other brands. Armstrong, F1 have done it, to name but a few, but it does work really well by diffusing that load and giving the wing more shape when overpowered. Next, you can see we've got a longer center strut, and this changes the overall shape, increasing the wind range. Then we see a greater percentage of the NHTRS canopy material, which is to increase the durability without actually increasing the weight. But what is new is the introduction of the NX6, which is a triple ripstop, which replaces the double. Next, they've introduced carbon UDI tape along the whole leading edge. Look, it's always been there, but now it's in the whole length. You'll also notice a change of shape of the center strut, which is more ergonomic, especially when you've got handles there. Then when you look at the profile, you can see it's almost like a gull wing profile, and that aids stability. And then last but not least is the active twist tips, which again improve the gust response. So all these changes sound very impressive, but do they actually have an impact on the water? Well, let's find out. So let's talk first of all about the upwind performance. And yes, I absolutely agree with the marketing spin. It definitely has an increased upwind performance from the previous years. In fact, in terms of other wings, it is really impressive. Now, this is a combination of the canopy material, the very sleek shape that it's got. It is a very efficient low drag wing, which just aids going upwind. It's got a very tight canopy, but you still have low end grunt, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What is interesting is it is absolutely silent upwind. There is no fluttering whatsoever in the canopy. It's a real joy to buzz upwind. You can get really tight angles and it's not stressful on your body either. Yes, I use a harness, but you don't need to be able to get the maximum performance out of this wing. So let's move on to tacks and jibes now. Look, I was a big fan of last year's Nova Pro, but its one downfall I found was that it did have a tendency for the nose to drop slightly in tacks. They have eliminated that with this year's Nova Pro. I think this is a combination of moving the center of lift further forward, but when you're tacking there, it is always a positive lift in the nose. It always wants to fly around, and really you just have to guide it there as opposed to manhandle it, which is what I really like. It makes maneuvers much easier. It's really playful in jibes. You can throw it around because it's lightweight. And with the boom, again, you don't have to look where your hands go. I have to say, again, I won't be using anything other than a boom on this year's Nova Pro. So I think the main takeaway for me in tacks and jibes was that you can be careless, make mistakes, and still get away with it, which is something that I really like. So the new materials do sound very fancy, and they absolutely do make a difference. It does feel lighter in your hands. Now, that being said, it's not the lightest wings that I've ever used. There are definitely lighter wings on the market, but when you compare it to last year's Nova Pro, which, might I add, it wasn't heavy, is definitely significantly lighter. You pair this with the fact that it flies really well and seems to always have this lift, it does feel very light in your hands. I do love the shaped center strut. Look, as I said, I use it with a boom, so it doesn't really make that much difference, but I have used it with handles, and if you do, the ergonomics are epic. So yes, the change is subtle and specific, but if you use handles, you'll definitely notice it. If you use a boom like I do, it just looks really good. Okay, so moving on to waves and flagging out behind you for, let's say, for example, downwind runs. As soon as there's an airflow over the wing, it wants to fly. It's got a very neutral lift and it is just magical to fly behind you. Yes, there is a little bit of wander, especially at lower speeds, but the moment you get an airflow over it, it then becomes rock solid. So the key to it is to keep the momentum going and make sure that you're using a foil that has a relatively good glide, or you remain within the pocket. You keep one of those two things up and then this thing behaves perfectly. The Nova Pro is definitely not a dedicated wave wing, but it does perform incredibly well. Now, I do want to talk about the new bag. It may seem insignificant, but the previous Nova, you couldn't pack it away with the boom attached. And as I mentioned, I always use a boom. So now you've got this elongated bag. You can pop everything in and it's an absolute piece of cake to travel around with. They've really thought about it. It's high quality, big tick. Also, I want to mention the new J handle. So if you want to, you can attach that onto the front and then you've got this option of being able to have more control if you're in the waves or indeed you're downwinding. Lastly, let's talk about the sandbag that comes with this wing. Look, I know it's a bit of a gimmick, but actually I use it all the time. It's such a godsend to be able to just pop that onto the beach, tie your leash on top of it, and then you can walk away, have a drink, come back again. Really nice feature. It looks really impressive. Now, the main thing that I want to talk about with this wing is its ability to handle gusts and low wind. The wind range on this is incredible. I've been so impressed. In fact, when I was testing it, I only had one size. I went to WA where the wind went from everything from 10 knots to, I think it was like 35 knots one day. And I only had this wind to play with and it really coped well across that range. There wasn't any point where I felt completely overpowered and out of control. I seemed to be able to just manage the gusts. The wingtips just fold away when it gets really overpowered. So yeah, it's not just marketing spiel. I can hand on heart say this thing has an incredibly large wind range. And actually for me, that's probably the standout feature of this wing. Okay, so on to my dislikes, the things that personally I would change if I had the option. And the first being the shift lock system. Look, I was actually a really big fan of that in the first iterations. But because all I use is a boom now, I find that it's just a bit of a waste for me. If I was somebody that was chopping and changing, going from handles, the J handle, then absolutely it's a great system. But for me, I use a boom and I think it's just extra weight that I wouldn't need. So for my personal preference, I think I'd probably just do away with that and have a boom. And the second one for me is that I spend all my time in the waves with a wing. And so I would have liked it to be a little bit more focused towards that. And I would have sacrificed some performance in other features. I'm sure they are going to develop that in time to come. And what's interesting is that I haven't actually used the regular Nova, which has just a boom with attachment points, is probably a little bit lighter, I don't know. And I imagine it is more suited to waves. If anybody out there has used it, please type in the comments below. I'd be really interested to see your feedback on that. Okay, so overall, the 2025 Nova Pro is an excellent all-rounder. In fact, I have not been on a wing that is so good at doing everything. It's very versatile, but it packs performance. It's user-friendly and it just wants to fly. The absolute standout feature is, as I've mentioned, its wind range, which means you don't need to buy so many, which is great for your wallet. Personally, I've just got 2 of them, and that seems to span the entire wind range, which is really impressive. Like with always, please can you like and subscribe? Really helps me grow, really helps me make more content like this. And if you've got any questions, type in them below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. All right, see you on the water again soon.